One day you're serving in the military, you come home and you're dealing with an injury. My opioid misuse and need got so strong. Addiction is hard. You have to reach out for help. The recovery side of it is amazing. You get to a place where you're proud of yourself again.
If you or someone you know is struggling, there is hope. Recovery is possible.
And I hope some of you are online tuning in with us tonight for this piece of our series on the opioid crisis. I want to thank our church family, especially our senior pastor Wade, for giving time on Sunday morning and here on Wednesday evenings for us to talk about a really important topic that is often not discussed. So we're going to dive in today a little bit talking about a very important aspect of the whole piece of this crisis, and that is recovery. And with me this evening is Jason Goodman. He's with Metro Drug Coalition here in Knoxville. Jason, welcome to Central Bearden. We're glad to have you with us.
Thank you for having me. I'm honored to be here.
When the word recovery comes into your brain, well, first of all, let me do this. Talk a little bit about what you do at Metro Drug Coalition and what your position is there and kind of what your job is about and what you do there. Let's do that first.
Okay. At Metro Drug, I'm the Director of Recovery Support Services. So myself and my team, our focus is on recovery support, everything that has to do with supporting someone in their access to the recovery process or furthering their process, making resources available to them. Just keeping folks in the middle of the boat.
So, where did you come from? What kind of a journey brought you to a place where you'd be the person helping other people access these important services? If you don't mind talking about that.
Absolutely. So, it turns out that all the pain and all the hurt of active addiction turned into my gift. It turned into the opportunity for me to serve other people because I could relate, I could empathize. My journey looks like many others' journey, that it started with childhood trauma, untreated childhood trauma, followed by continual trauma on throughout life through active addiction, and then finding my way into. I went to treatment 3 times. I went twice as a railroad conductor. With good insurance, and then I left the second time, and I wouldn't follow through with the recommendations that they laid out for me, a recovery plan. So between second and third episode in treatment, I had about a 15-year-long run of active addiction that resulted in incarceration, hurting myself and a lot of other people along the way, a missed opportunity to raise my 2 beautiful children, and then I wrote letters from a jail cell asking to come back to that treatment program, and I followed a good butt whipping will take you a long way. So I got whipped enough to break my will enough to step into treatment and follow through with the recommendations. And here I am sitting here with you today.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing that with us. We're glad you're here with us today.
Thank you.
And we're glad you're helping other people.
Thank you.
So when you hear the word recovery, I think that word means a lot of different things to a lot of different people.
Yes.
So what does recovery mean? Not just for you personally, but what do you want other people to know about that word, recovery?
When I think about the recovery and try to sum it up, I think about a restoration to dignity. Somewhere in the midst of a disease that is centered in guilt and shame, there's a lot of dignity lost in that along the way. I feel like it kind of got robbed from me in that early childhood trauma piece. So then you add all the guilt and shame of my actions and the consequences along the way. I just find recovery to be a process of restoring a person holistically back to their dignity.
Okay. And does that kind of a journey through that process to regain dignity look the same for everybody, or is it different for everybody?
It's different for everybody, and I want it to be. Let me say that. I want it to be different for everybody because honestly, it's a super complicated disease. It's really, really complicated. There's a lot of moving parts. And I don't think we can have one cookie cutter response to what recovery looks like, feels like, is like for everybody. It shouldn't be that way. It's too complicated for it to be, this is one thing, this is the poster child for recovery, this is what it's supposed to look like. No, I think it's different for a lot of different people, and that makes it available to a lot of different people if there's multiple pathways to recovery.
Okay. When you go through this process, one of the things that we hear in the literature, and I heard Dr. Lloyd say, and I've said it in our church on Sunday morning to our congregation, you mentioned the term disease. Mm-hmm. Really important to think about the addiction as a disease. Mm-hmm. And what Dr. Lloyd says is it's a disease and not a moral failure.
Absolutely.
So can you speak to that a little bit and how that affects you, that it's a disease and not a failure
Sure.
of yours?
Absolutely. It's a brain disease. There's a lot of moving parts, but there's a genetic component. We find that folks that had this in their family history, that plays a major role in how the disease takes effect in your life. The opportunity, availability of the substances coupled with family history, and then, you do the piece about trauma and what folks have experienced in their life, and you get this perfect mix of everything that somebody's gone through, coupled with the availability of a substance. Once they put that in their body and they treat that part of their disease, then I consider it to be sick people getting well as opposed to bad people getting good. Mm. Because it's a chronic relapsing disease. So if we put the focus on this is a moral failure, this is something that somebody has in them that's intrinsically wrong, when they start getting better, if there's a lapse, then we want to throw some kind of punitive response to that, like you've made a bad choice. It's just a part of the disease. Okay. It's a part of the disease. It's symptomatic of the disease.
You mentioned childhood trauma, and I'm sure you're familiar with ACEs, the study that we're taking a much greater look at childhood trauma and what that means and what those consequences look like down the road. And it is important to treat trauma and mm-hmm. to understand that trauma has impact on people, whether it be adult trauma or childhood trauma. Mm-hmm. Do you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. My ACE score is high. My ACE score is high, and I've come in contact with a lot of other people that it's that way. And the truth is that piece is treatable. Addiction is a treatable disease. We see some good outcome when folks participate in a treatment process. So all that stuff is treatable.
Okay, so now I'm a little ignorant on this topic, which is why I wanted you to come here today to talk about treatment.
Yep.
So it seems to me, in what I've seen and what I've learned, mm-hmm. that treatment comes sort of in two different packages. One package is what I would call an abstinence package, okay, which is a process to get somebody to stop the behavior, stop using the substances, stop abusing the substances, whatever they are.
Yes, sir.
And there are Christian programs like Celebrate Recovery and the 12-step kind of approach. Mm-hmm. To me, it seems like that's kind of one family of recovery programs. And right. Then there's medicated assistant treatment. Mm-hmm. And medicated assistant treatment is getting medication, injections or pills, to help deal with the urge. Mm-hmm. And then to help people and wean off that so that they're not dependent on those other substances. So am I oversimplifying this? You think is some of what I've said right? Tell me what's right.
Well, again, addiction is a treatable disease. What we're seeing currently, the data that's available to us now, that in regard to opioid addiction specifically, that medically assisted treatment has been found to be the standard now. They're seeing great outcomes. The thing that I will say about that, and I'm not a doctor, I'm not a medical professional. I'm a person in long-term recovery who tries to help other people walk that path. But what I can tell you is what I've seen work well in regard to medication and the use of assisting someone with their recovery process or treating them, period, when it's properly prescribed and there's these other wraparound services with that medication that helps treat the person holistically. I've seen that process work very well for many people. Some that I have worked with directly. But it's, again, I'll say this, the proper prescribing and the wraparound services is where we're seeing good outcome, because improper prescribing is what got us into that mess to start with. So the proper prescribing of medication with someone who has a reputation to be that person, followed by some recovery support, yes, that is one pathway of recovery. Some of the other pathways include some of the other things that you mentioned. We're dealing out here today with, it's not just opioid addiction. People are addicted to many other substances. So again, I don't think we need to have one cookie cutter response to addiction. I think we need to be in support of multiple pathways of recovery, and it doesn't look the same for everybody, but yeah, there seem to be these, it seems sometimes like there are two competing factions, abstinence-based versus medically assisted treatment. And we continue to draw these lines in the sand, and we've got to stop doing that. I mean, we see the effects of that on our society out here right now when we get in these teams and how toxic that can be.
Yes.
We just need to be talking about treating addiction altogether in the healthiest way possible and supporting folks in the recovery, no matter what pathway it is that they choose or the one that's working for them.
It seems to me it's a little bit like the condom argument. If we hand out condoms to people, it's going to cause them to have more sex, versus telling them just to be abstinent, not to participate.
That's a great
and
example.
We can moralize, about that when science tells us that certain things are true.
Yes.
And we really need to weigh in on science. And science is telling us that done well, medicated assisted treatment is a win for a lot of people.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes, yeah, and we see some great outcome. And again, I had my personal bias, and part of supporting someone in their recovery is managing my own stuff and understanding that. And I see this in a lot of environments. When something's working for us, we tend to draw that close to our chest, and it becomes very important to us. We become very territorial about the things that we know that work. And that's great that it's that important to me, but it's not the only way. And my stuff can come into that when somebody's telling me they've chosen a different path that in the past I didn't believe in. It doesn't matter whether I believe in it or not. It matters whether the person is willing to try that out, if it's working for them, and can I manage my own stuff enough to participate in helping them in their recovery and pointing out, like, man, you're doing a great job with this, What can I do today to help you with your recovery? I'm really proud of you, and pointing out the strength that it takes to walk a different path.
Right.
And we see that out here in the recovery community a lot. We have a lot of folks that want to alienate people who are not specifically on the pathway that they're participating in. We've got to stop doing that stuff.
Stop doing that.
We've got to stop doing that.
So in Knoxville, what is the recovery landscape look like? If you're somebody in Knoxville who's needing help getting over an opioid addiction or another kind of addiction, what does the landscape look like for someone? What's available? Where do you go? Who do you call?
Sure.
How does that system kind of work?
That's a great
Jason?
question. And I've shied away from doing this in the past, but I'm just going to say it tonight. Call Metro Drug Coalition. Call us. If somebody's looking for some help, call us, because we're a neutral entity that works on plugging folks into what it is they're looking for out here, and we act as this hub to connect people to the spokes that are out here in this community. And to your part of your question is what's available. We have a plethora of resources in Knoxville. This is a mecca for treatment. A lot of people come from other parts of the country to go to some of the treatment programs here, and then they get here and they find out how much of a thriving recovery community we have in Knoxville. In many respects, like, there's a lot of faith-based support here. There's a lot of churches who have gotten on board and said, you know what, we want to be a part of helping people in the recovery. We have a ton of secular 12-step meeting participation here and availability here. A ton of sober living. There's quite a bit of good, reputable treatment. whatever pathway you choose, it's available here in Knoxville. So and I hear this like we don't have enough resources. What I found is the person that's saying that is not resourceful enough, because it's here. You know, that's our job at Metro Drug on a regular basis, especially the recovery support team. We're constantly networking, looking for additional resources. So my team, they're a walking resource guide, and they're up to speed daily on the things that are going on. So I would say to anybody that if they're looking for support in Knoxville, it's here. You're not alone. If you're family of, you're not alone either. We want to also support you in the process, because the focus tends to be on the person who is experiencing addiction or needs recovery. And yes, we need to focus on that, but one part that we tend to shy away from is getting personally and directly involved with families out here that are suffering. And that's something that we want to be a part of. We want to support them in their process as well.
So I'm gonna give you two sort of real examples and ask you to reflect on those. So
Okay.
Somebody came up to me a few months ago, or when we were talking about this, and said they knew of somebody that had been in methadone treatment locally for a long time.
Okay.
And all that ever happened was they had to take more and more and more methadone.
Got it.
And it didn't look like there was any end in sight. What's wrong with this?
Well, the person's situation has to be more complicated to that. So with just that much information, I don't know that I'd have a good answer for you. I'd have to have more information.
Okay.
I'll just put it that way. What's wrong with that? I'll say this about opioid addiction. If they're alive and breathing today and they've been in a continual treatment process for that long, I could see where somebody might feel like there's something wrong with that, but I could also see some things that are right with that the person they're still with us, they've participated in a process that's lasted this long, and I would want to talk to that person and ask them, do you think there's something wrong with what you got going on, and are there additional steps or support that you need to maybe go into a new phase if that's what they're interested in doing?
I really like your answer. So another scenario sort of to ask about is, I know somebody that's been in, we all know who this is in this room, I think, most of us do. We know somebody who's been in and out, with alcohol being the substance issue, in and out of maybe 100 different programs, including detox and short-term and then long-term, and some names that we hear that are respected names in treatment, but it's just over and over and over and over again. What's going on here? I know you may say the same thing, I don't have enough information.
I mean, it's a little more complicated than just answering a question like that with the information that I have. But what I would say is, if they've been 100 times, I hope 101 sticks, the 101st time. Because I've been asked this question too. How many times do we Narcan somebody back to life? Every single time. If it was your son or your daughter, you would want to Narcan them back to life every single time, because what if that's the time that it takes? This is what we do your pastor knows this, you know this, and members of this congregation sitting here tonight know this. We sowed seeds. We sowed seeds, and we don't necessarily look for what the outcome is. We continue to meet people where they are, hold the frame, treat them as the human being and the spirit-filled person that they are, and we continue to sow these seeds. What I know about somebody who's coming back to the treatment process 100 times, there's something in there that is drawing them back to that process. Something in the midst of all that pain is pulling them back to these seeds that have been sown in them that will not go away. And it may be the 101st time that something clicks. I told you I went 3 times. And some people would say this. My family felt the same way. This is your 3rd time back in the same treatment process. What's going to be different now? I could not get that place and the people there and the way they treated me out of my spirit. No matter how high I got, no matter how much the consequences piled up, that 3rd time something clicked. Something clicked. So I can see for family and even for that person how draining it could be to say, man, we're going down the same road again. Like you're going back to treatment again. It could be the time.
I know a young woman who's been in and out of recovery and in and out of prison, and over and over and over again. Somebody that I work with in my HIV work. So she's got stuff piled on, as you said, lots of things piled on. And need to get down and knock on wood somewhere here, but, it seems like something's clicked that's different this time.
Yeah.
And Dr. Lloyd said, Jesus said, how many times do we forgive? How many times do we go back? 70 times 7. And Dr. Lloyd said, he wasn't talking about 49 either. He was talking about we just keep on and keep on.
It doesn't stop. It doesn't stop.
So I was going to ask you, who should someone call if they need help? And you just told us Metro Drug Coalition.
Listen, we're not the only game in town. There is plenty of resources out here. There is the Tennessee Red Line that someone can call, and they can direct you to resources all throughout the state of Tennessee. There are some great treatment agencies in here, some very large agencies that, I won't name them because I haven't got permission to do so from them tonight, but there's plenty of resources out here. But yes, I would say I left you with a ton of my cards. Contact us at Metro Drug. We would love to help anybody, anytime, and just talk to us about the other resources that are out here. Again, we act as this hub to get people connected to what they need out here in the community.
So I'm glad you mentioned Tennessee Red Line. So Tennessee Red Line is a phone number that's answered live 24 hours, 24/7 by an actual human being. He answers the phone. I know that because I dialed it to check it out one day.
See there? That's how you do this stuff.
And
you got to check
and somebody answered the phone, and I just said, I was a minister at a local church, and I was just checking to see if somebody was really on the other end of the line. And she said, there's really somebody on the other end of this line.
Yeah.
So that is a good resource for people.
It is. And they really stepped up their process there a couple of years ago. The job that I had prior to this, one of my staff members has that now, Ashley Krause. She's our Lifeline director. Lifeliners are all across the state of Tennessee, but the Red Line came to us and said, we feel like our process is missing something. We feel like the person's getting on the phone and we're giving them phone numbers and they're really not connecting on the other end. So they said, would you guys participate in a warm handoff? So what they did is they would tell the person the 3 resources and they would put them on hold. And they would say, we're going to plug you in with a Lifeliner in your area right now. So stay on hold. If you want to talk to them, we'll let you talk to them. So they would warm hand them off to us. And we would talk to them and we would walk with them and get them into their, hopefully get them connected to what they were looking for. More people got referred to care on a Tuesday than 4 months prior to that. So that's how impactful somebody's warm hand in yours is, and I place it in that next warm hand. And yes, there's this human interaction element to it, and it's not just an answering service somewhere that you leave a message on. So yeah, they're effective. And that stuff gets filtered down to agencies and individuals out here that are doing this kind of work all the time. So yes, it's reputable enough to refer somebody to the Red Line.
Good deal.
Yeah.
I don't know what kind of time we're on. We're getting close, Wade? I'm fine. So we have a small crowd in here, but does anybody have a question that you'd like to ask Jason? Mark, go ahead, man.
Yes, sir.
And she's not able to function, she's sleepy, she's just not able to handle the normal daily responsibilities. And so
Got it.
those are involved are saying, well, we're just trading one substance for another.
Got it.
I have a nephew who I know he was hard count twice, not 3 times, but it was the 4th time. Seems to have been between 2 years, getting ready to go on a mission trip, and I think finally, after 3 or 4 years of up, down, treatment programs, everything, that's it.
Yeah.
But he did have an issue. He finally went pretty cold turkey with methadone. He was pulling a methadone clinic every day or whatever his treatment seemed like.
Got
But
it.
anyway, what is the current, I guess, viewpoint on that?
In regard to the person who's taking the methadone and seems to be increasing. Got it. Well, sometimes it takes somebody that's outside of a problem looking in to actually help somebody see some of the issues that might be going on with the process. So what I would say to that is, and let me say this first, thank you for being willing to ask a question like that and to be supportive of family members that you have that are going through this. So I applaud you for for being a part of that process with them. And I would say that if that person is interested in doing something different, to maybe sit down with another treatment professional and say, this is what we're experiencing in this treatment process. Do you think something's wrong with this? And what would your suggestions be? Do you think that there's another available option out here? Because what we want to do with somebody in a situation like that, if they're being treated and it seems like the treatment modality is not working, is to offer them options. And the option may not be, let's go cold turkey with the methadone, because I can tell you it's not that simple. But what we want to present to folks is, if they're willing to try something different, and that's what they want for their process, is to say, here are some other options. What do you think about taking a look at, maybe changing course now and going in this direction? But here are the available resources to do that.
So if, let's say, a husband or a parent who's dealing with this with their child or their spouse,
Yep.
that has been called in the drug commission, you might be able to talk them through some different options.
Absolutely, yes. And what we would do is we would get them in front of the folks that are trained, certified, and licensed to help them make a decision like that. Absolutely. And we would be willing to work with the individual in regard to coaching and some of the stuff that we do that's not clinical. It's just focused on recovery support. But if it's outside of what we do, we would certainly plug them in and refer them to somebody that might be able to help them with that part of the process. It's get a second opinion. If you were dealing with any other disease, you're not just going to settle for, we're going and seeing this one person. You're going to find the folks that do this and do it the best, and you're going to keep digging until you find something that seems to be working. So I would say treat this the same way.
Wade?
Jason, one comment and then one question.
Okay.
I had lunch with a church member this last week, and I told him Dr. Lloyd was really pushing the idea that this is not a moral failure. And he said, no, it is a moral failure, but not the individual. It's a moral failure of our culture. It's a moral failure of our business model as greed over care of individuals. And I thought he had a very good point.
I think he did too. Yes. Yep.
So my question is, part of what I'm learning is that it takes at least 90 days to start rewiring the brain and for the frontal lobe to start working.
Correct.
But if I don't have the financial resources, what if I can only do 28 days? What are the options for someone seeking treatment?
Sure.
So they can't.
Yeah, Dr. Lloyd would have told you when he was here that the model for him, he was treated as a medical professional. So the resources that were available to him were long-term. He had some exceptional care that lasted for a very long period of time. So some of the things that we're doing and many others in this community are doing is we're putting the focus on, and let me tell you, some folks are not getting 28 days now. Some of that time's being dialed back. I just worked with an individual, he went to treatment for 10 days and came home. And they were quick to, discharge him. And a lot of folks are going to 4 and 5 days worth of detox and being discharged, and that's what's available to them. So we have to talk about the gap, which is long-term recovery support past that. And let me tell you, one of the 12-step fellowships, they wrote a book back in the 30s, and they had this right then, and they didn't even know why it was right then because the brain science wasn't available. They said go to 90 meetings in 90 days. That's what they said. So basically that equates to, because we're rebellious, I don't want to hear go to a meeting every day. I'm going to rebel against that. But if you give me the suggestion to go to 90 and 90, that sounds a little different. And they didn't realize that the folks that came to 90 meetings in 90 days and locked that into place, they didn't know then that their brain was starting to heal in the way that you're talking about. So we have to talk about the things that are available to somebody that might come out of 28 days worth of treatment or 30 days or 3 days, 4 days. There are some things out here like sober living, a good structured environment with some rules and the proper structure to get somebody moving toward the recovery process and kind of being self-supporting and paying their own way. But some of the rules in that environment is they have drug screening policy, they have a curfew. You're required to go to so many meetings a week, and you're in that safe and supported environment with some new people who are kind of on the same path. So there's sober living, there's recovery coaching, there's peer support, there's sponsorship, there's your church community. It's about getting somebody plugged in after treatment. And what we're trying to do, we're putting a heavy focus on now is folks coming out of incarceration and folks coming out of that treatment environment and trying to provide them with those resources that you're talking about, no matter their socioeconomic situation. You know, what is available to you no matter what your situation is, and there's a ton out here, quite a bit. I hope that answers your question.
Well, there's hope.
Oh, yeah.
There's
a lot of hope. Yeah. I've watched folks recover through a global pandemic who were separated from, and somebody brought this up in a training, and I thought it was amazing the other day. He said as soon as the word social distancing came out, he rebelled against that and said, I'm not going to socially distance from anybody, but I will physically distance from them. He said, I'm not going to stop. Even if it's virtually, I'm still going to socialize with the kind of support that I need to make my way through it. And is there hope? Of course there is. People have all of what we were used to in regard to recovery, like regular meeting attendance, community, helping other people, and that stuff happens directly without a mask on. I've watched people recover, myself included, throughout this pandemic. So yeah, there's hope. Absolutely. As long as somebody has breath in their body, there's hope for them to recover. Absolutely.
So we've got your buddy Jessica coming next week to bring some Narcan and talk to us a little bit about that. And
She's the real deal.
She's the real deal.
She's the real
isn't she?
deal. Yeah.
She's the real deal.
Yeah, you'll see. She's the real
So
deal.
the last part of our program will be next Wednesday evening, the 5th at 6 o'clock. We're going to have Narcan. It's a nasal spray. We're going to offer that here to people that come to go through the training with Jessica and then leave with Narcan. We're also offering, because Jessica's the real deal, we're also going to let people who would like to watch the training online. I think you have to be a Knox County person to get Narcan from Jessica because she's the Knox County rep. But if you're a Knox County resident and you watch the Narcan training online and communicate with Jessica that you want to register to do that, then she'll make arrangements to get you your Narcan after the training's over. So that's really cool that we're going to be able to do that.
And I would encourage folks not to personalize that too much. We're not saying come get a Narcan training because you've got somebody who may be using in your home or close to your family unit. You might be at the Kroger in the parking lot. With some of the stuff we're facing now, I would much rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it. So yeah, it's a fantastic way to participate in maybe turning the corner for somebody out here in the community if something goes wrong.
What you're going to do is save a life until the emergency medical people arrive. Mm-hmm. So it works. Thank you so much for being here with us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
It's been a real pleasure having you here. And I've got your cards, and we're going to encourage people in our church family that are dealing with these kind of issues, either personally or with family members, to call MDC and get some help.
Fantastic.
Okay.
Thank you for having me.
Let's have a prayer together, folks. Well, there's hope. There's hope that we have the love and care of one another to lead us through tough times. There's hope that the good Lord will walk alongside with us through the valleys that we walk through and help us manage the difficulties and stay strong and have the will to stick with a program. Lord, we just would ask you to bless those people like Jason and Jessica and Dr. Lloyd and the millions of others across this country who are giving of their lives to help bring people through this journey. We ask you to give them strength, especially on their worst days, when they get bad news that somebody has gone back into jail or has relapsed. To give them the strength to know that the words that they use and the caring look in their eyes matters, makes a difference to other people. Because that's what you taught us to do, is to care for our fellow men, to look one another in the eyeballs, and to let people know that we care. That's what you taught us. Help us to live that out in all that we do, and we ask this in your name, Jesus Christ. Amen. Thank you.